Hey guys, welcome to the channel. As you see in the thumbnail, what if Iseei got Fullbringer powers instead of Sacred Gear Part 1? Before I start, please do support for more awesome content and subscribe my channel and like this video. Go support and follow the Nefarious Doctor for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story, link in the description. Let's start this video. A great place to enjoy some quality time with your family and friends, go on a date, get a good education, and even check out some of the odd rumors in the city, since people say ghosts reside in the town. Now normally people wouldn't listen to these ridiculous rumors since they said they're just fairy tales, but what if there were those who could see the spirits? Who could see the monsters of the night? Well, that's where our story begins. Two individuals. One blessed with power and could see spirits since the day he was born. While the other one chose to enter this strange but terrifying world. In the civilian area. A quiet and peaceful morning in the neighborhood until a voice yelled. Iseei. It's morning. You better be up or I'll drag you out of your bed. A loud voice boomed into the area as a brown-haired boy groaned a bit as he looked at his alarm clock before seeing the time. 7:30 in the morning. I hate mornings. He said as he rolled out of his bed and yawned a bit before heading to the bathroom to wash his face with some cold water. Hoping to get rid of his sleep. As he splashed his face with water, he then dried his face a bit before seeing in the mirror. A very thin, skinny female teenager with light pale skin. She had short dark red pinkish hair and purple eyes. She also had two thick red pinkish eyebrows. Her bangs are parted on both sides of her face, and she also wears dark red framed narrow eyeglasses too. Good morning, Iseei. How did you sleep last night? Busy fantasizing about a certain she asked before the boy grunted in reply as he left the bathroom. No, I was busy with my business. He said to save face until the girl cackled at him as she left the bathroom with him as well. Admit it, Iseei. You and I have only known each other for what? A year? And I can tell you are in love. She said happily until Iseei got to his dresser. Iseei rolled his eyes before he smirked. I guess I might as well ask how your sleep was then. So tell me, Ika. What perverted fantasy did you put us in this time? The girl smiled as she leaned on his bedroom door with a cheerful grin on her face as she regaled her tale. Oh, just you and me with Urahara on a large lover's bed as she was covered in only a thin layer of clothing that showed off her curves and all. Oh, it made me want to pop her cherry if I could. Sadly, I don't have the mechanisms to do so. She said with a sigh of disappointment until Iseei patted her shoulder. Don't feel too bad, Chizuru. You and I both know Urahara is a literal angel that is too pure for this world. Unfortunately, we have the karate master and the king of prudes to get past in order to even talk to the angel. Iseei said as Chizuru agreed with him on the two obstacles that stood in the way. The karate master of Karakura. Tatsuki Urasawa, and the king of prudes. Ichigo Kurosaki. Chizuru groaned lightly as she knew how frustrating those two were when it came to Urahara. Honestly, those two really just need to admit that they like each other already, so they can bang each other. Chizuru smiled when she heard Iseei laugh. Ha. Oh, that'll be the day, my friend. Chizuru giggled lightly as she asked him. Are you almost ready to go, handsome? Yeah. And I'm honestly surprised that you speak to me normally compared to how to chat with the other guys at the school. You never flirt with me. Meh. You're the only guy I'll ever flirt and tease. Chizuru said as Iseei sighed before he opened the door that Chizuru was leaning on, only for her to fall back and lean on him. Iseei looked down at Chizuru with a deadpan look and asked. Seriously? Chizuru pouted at his lackluster question before asking. You literally have a hot girl resting on you. How are you not aroused by this? Iseei smiled as he replied. It's simple. That's because I've gotten used to my perverted friend's antics. Chizuru gasped dramatically as she whined. No. My charms are weakening. Iseei laughed lightly at her display before he straightened Chizuru out, and the two proceeded to head downstairs. You know what? Since I'm in such a good mood right now, I'll make breakfast. Chizuru squealed happily when she heard that. Kyah, I'm so happy right now. Ah. Today is going to be a good day, I can feel it. Iseei chuckled at this declaration before replying. You've become awfully optimistic. I didn't think my cooking could have that effect on you. Iseei said as Chizuru put her hands behind her head and walked beside him. Well, it's because you've improved in your cooking since it no longer looks or tastes like shit. And I can't cook to save my life. Literally, one time I burned water. I don't even know what happened to it. Chizuru said as she also complained about the cooking curse on her and her mother. For some reason, the females of her household haven't been able to cook to save their life. They can make simple things like a sandwich, but cooking or baking? No. This made Iseei laugh at her family curse as they went downstairs to see Mickey smile at the two while eating some eggs she made earlier. Well. I'm happy to see my future daughter-in-law is doing well and getting her future husband up from bed, but it doesn't take forever to get dressed. I don't want to be a grandmother yet. Iseei blushed lightly before he turned away and scratched his head with a scowl. Ugh, damn it mom. Chizuru couldn't help but giggle with a smirk. But of course Mrs. Haidu, it's only reasonable for his future wife to wake up her future husband. The women giggled at the poor boy until Iseei noticed that his dad was gone. Hey. Where's dad? Oh, he had to go work early today since there's been a lot of trouble lately in town. Lots of destruction in different parts of the city. There's even some rumors going around about a gang doing property damage in the business district, so please be careful when you two go out. Also be sure to head back home after school. There's a police watch going around trying to see if they can find anything that can link the damage lately to the rumored gang. Miki said as she looked at the two kids who she loves with all her heart. Gotcha mom. Iseei replied, but had an idea of what was causing all of the damage in the first place. Those strange masked monsters he saw during the night. Ever since Iseei could remember moving to Karakura town, he's seen these strange masked monsters that appear during the night and watch as they hunt down what appear to be ghosts. Of course he couldn't do anything about it and facing one of those things meant death. Still, what are those things and why do they hunt down ghosts? Are they perhaps sports like the dead? Iseei thought as he spoke to Chizuru and his mother before the two high school students headed to their school, which was a very nice one compared to Kuo Academy, since this school was originally company ed, so there wasn't a massive population of males or females. Iseei and Chizuru continued to chat like normal until Iseei saw a strange blood-red butterfly fly in the air until it landed on the school gate. The colors amazed Iseei before he felt his sleeve tugged by Chizuru looking at him worriedly. Hey, you okay? You were staring off into space. She asked as Iseei noticed that the butterfly had a strange aura around it, confirming that it wasn't a normal butterfly. It's nothing. I just thought I saw a butterfly. Come on. Let's get to class. Iseei said as he and Chizuru headed to the school gates to see that a lot of people were gossiping about what's been happening on social media. Damn. Never knew there would be a lot of commotion because of a silly rumor about a gang. Chizuru said as she then had hearts in her eyes as she ran to a special person. Orihim. Good morning. Iseei sighed as he watched Chizuru about to tackle an orange-haired woman before she was suddenly punched away by a girl with long black hair and aggressive-looking eyes, making a bead of sweat roll down his and the young head. Hey Orihim. Sorry about Chizuru. Iseei said as he nervously rubbed the back of his head while Orihim giggled a little at her friend's apology. No. It's okay Iseei. I'm used to it since Chizuru had been like this since we were in middle school. Eventually I got used to it. Still she surprises me when she sneaks up behind me. Orihim said as they looked to see Tatsuki and Chizuru arguing until Ichigo Kurosaki himself walked into the gates to see the duo. He then looked at Iseei and Orihim and asked. Chizuru? Ichigo asked, which was met with Iseei nodding. Of course. Who else would attack Orihim's lovely oppai? And it's things like that which makes me wonder how Tatsuki hasn't kicked your ass yet. Iseei shrugged his shoulders as he replied. Just wait for it. Suddenly, something very different happened today. Watch out. Isei's eyes widened before he immediately put his arm in front of him to stop a kick from before he flipped her over and slammed her on the ground. Isei's eyes widened in shock, as did everyone else's. Oh wow. Where the hell did you learn how to do that? Iseei looked at Tatsuki surprised and pondered aloud. Our reflexes. If Chizuru wasn't concerned before, she is very concerned now. Iseei had never fought back against Tatsuki before, he would always take the hit. Ice, what's got you so out of it? Iseei looked at Chizuru and shook his head. It's nothing. Honest. I'm just a little worried about my dad. One of the places that was attacked was my dad's workplace, so of course I'd be worried about him. But seriously, I'm fine. Maybe dodging the kendo girls back home improved my reflexes. Tatsuki. Attack me again. Iseei said as he braced himself to dodge the next attack, but unfortunately. Wham. Ow. Okay. Not doing that again. Iseei said as he rubbed the bump on his head while Tatsuki was cheering herself for chopping the boy. Orihim, being the angel that she is, ran up to Iseei and checked to see if he was okay. This irked Tatsuki a little bit as she was concerned about her friend being near the pervert. Ice-kun. Are you okay? I live in Orihim. I just gotta walk it off. Iseei said, but inwardly it was a completely different story. Oh, just hearing her being concerned about me warms my heart and soul. Chizuru gave him a thumbs up until the bell rang alerting the students to get to their classes. Well, I got to head to my classes. See you guys later at lunch. Iseei said as he headed to his homeroom, which was different from theirs since he was technically a second year. Still, what was that voice? Either way, at least I got to feel Orihim's concern for me. But why do I get the feeling that this day isn't going to end well? Iseei asked himself as he got ready for his classes. As he got his books out, he looked at his biker gloves and clenched them as he let a small smile appear on his face. Those gloves were fingerless biker gloves that he had with him ever since he was 10 when Rin moved away. Iseei was sad that he never got to say goodbye to him, but loved the present he was left by his friend, which made him treasure and take care of them. He loved wearing them so much, he took some self-defense courses that kept him in shape and let him learn how to use different forms of martial arts. Time skip. A small butterfly from before flew around a few power lines until a portal opened to reveal a black-haired girl wearing strange garments as she looked at her phone. No devils, fallen, angels, or grim reapers. That's good, they always give us soul reapers a bad name and ruin our job since we're trying to help the deceased pass on. She said as she then looked at the city before feeling two powerful souls within the sea of spirits. So two spirits. One has some strange power awakened within them, while the other one has some power that isn't locked, but it's not fully awakened yet. The hollow seems to be near the first one. Best I head to that one first, she said before vanishing to the location. Iseei yawned as he rode his bike towards his home, since he was a bit sleepy from the day for some reason. Man. That project really took a lot out of me. Chizuru wanted to stay behind, but she had to get back home early after school, which Iseei didn't mind until he saw a blur skip across the telephone poles towards a certain clinic home. What the heck? Iseei said aloud as he then felt a chill go down his spine as he heard some low growling near the area until a small voice called out to him. Mister, come hide here. Quickly before he comes. A small girl said as she gestured for him to come to her hiding spot. Iseei, already knowing what was coming, rushed over to where the little girl was. Iseei then heard a loud roar and knew that one of those masked monsters was close by. The large monster was a tall lanky giant with a fishbone-like mask as it sniffed the air and looked around the area before stepping close to the two until its eyes widened as if it caught a new scent. It seemed to like it more as a long tongue licked its teeth before it turned and began to leave the area with its heavy footsteps, alerting others of its departure. Iseei and the small girl were still hidden in their hiding spot until they couldn't feel or hear its massive stomps anymore. Iseei then looked at the kid and asked, "What was that?" The girl was scared as she replied, I don't know. All I remember is that monster ate many people like me and I was scared for so long, so I stayed hidden. I've heard other spirits call those strange masked ones hollows. The older spirits say that soul reapers are to kill them, but I'm worried about fishbone more than anything else. The girl said as Iseei asked her concerning the name of the monster. Fishbone? Really? That's its name? He asked as the girl nodded and explained as best as she could. That's what I call him. It's because his head looks like a fish's head, she said as she tried to imitate the fish head in an adorable way. Iseei chuckled lightly at how cute the girl was before his eyes narrowed where he then gasped as he pushed the girl out of the way. Look out. Iseei shouted as he then gasped again as a large leg was then sticking out of his body. Iseei groaned at this before he saw the leg leave his body as Iseei fell on his knees to see the massive monster in front of him. The monster was a large six-legged insect. He had gray-green skin with orange joints as well as orange spots on his back. His mask was plain white with a humanoid face, framed by two tufts of brown hair and a forelock of purple hair that fell over the top of his mask. The girl from before was whimpering in fear as she looked at Isei's bloody body until the monster roared as it fired a web from its mouth and began to pull the girl towards him. The girl tried to get free but couldn't until he held out a hand towards him. Mister, please help me. She shouted as Iseei gritted his teeth, hearing the girl's cry for help until Iseei roared loudly as a strange white power erupted from his hands. Iseei charged at the monster and appeared before him in a split second until he sent a right hook into the masked monster's face that made it skid back as the girl was then safe in his arms as he set her down on the ground. Iseei got ready to fight as the monster got up and roared at him before he got into his position. Remember how my master taught me? Flow like the river. Swift but strong like the current. Iseei said to himself as he didn't even notice that the strange white energy surrounding his body closed his wound and stopped the bleeding before the monster roared in rage at him until it charged at him. This is the ultimate art for redirecting force. Before it, your fists are as tree leaves in a raging river. This is the ultimate martial arts form of offense and defense. As it sped towards him, Iseei felt it get closer and closer to him until the spider leaped towards him in an attack position until Isei's eyes widened as he shouted. Water stream rock smashing fist. Iseei then struck the monsters as it gasped from the pain before a powerful blast was shot out of it before it became purified as it left the city until Iseei smiled at his victory until he felt the strange power leave him which made his wound reopen until. My. That was some strength you have, kid. Maybe you'll make a great soul reaper. A voice said to him before he felt himself pass out from exhaustion. Unknown location. Iseei gasped as he woke up to see that he wasn't in his room or in the city, but a different room until he saw that his body was bandaged from his fight last night. Iseei then looked at his stomach to see that the scar was there before speaking. Whoa. So it wasn't a dream last night. I really fought that thing. Iseei asked himself until he heard a door open which made him alert as he looked to see a blonde-haired man in a strange attire with a little girl that was very young looking with a perpetual blush on her cheeks while wearing a strange white t-shirt with a logo on it called Urahara shop in pink print and a knee-length pink skirt with white dots. She had round purple eyes and long black hair with a purple tint. It was parted down the middle, with 2 strands of her bangs in the middle of her face, opposing each other. The rest of her hair was in pigtails with pink ties. Hello there, sleeping beauty. You caused us quite a lot of worry. That wound would have normally ended a human's life, but in your case it's different. The man asked as the little girl carried a small table and set it in between the two of them, as she then set out a few dishes and such before pouring tea into their cups, then leaving the room. Iseei was shocked at this before the man put away his fan, as he had a serious look in his eyes. My name is Kisuke Urahara, and you, my friend, had killed a hollow with that impressive martial arts attack, so I think it's time I give you a history lesson in the world you just entered. He said as Iseei swallowed his spit as he was both curious but worried about the man right in front of him. An hour later. So basically the Soul Reapers reap a soul and send them to the Soul Society? Iseei asked as he was eating his meal while listening to the lesson until Kisuke nodded in reply. That's correct. Unfortunately, this also means they needed to deal with the Devil faction and their methods of cheating death. Iseei raised a brow at this before asking. Devil faction? First time I've heard of them. Does that mean angels and fallen angels exist too? He asked as Kisuke nodded sagely before replying. Yes. For you see, the angels were once allied with the Quincy's as humans that were blessed by God, however, due to their techniques that destroy both the Hollow's body and their spirit that upset the balance which led to the Great War between the Soul Society, the Old Mau, the Fallen, and the Angels Quincy. Eventually the war ended with the Quincy's being eliminated, while the biblical faction lost so many lives. As for us, we lost many due to the many Soul Reapers, due to the casualties in the war. That's why the Soul Society recruit souls that enter their domain. They need to bolster their numbers and power so they can prepare for any sorts of incoming invasion. Kisuke said as Iseei nodded before he asked something that didn't surprise Kisuke, especially from what his friend told him about the boy. So are there any powerful women in the Soul Society like yourself, or is it mostly guys? This made Kisuke smile as he closed his fan and nodded. Oh yes, there are powerful ladies there. I should know. I got their special calendar here. All yours for only 2,000 yen. Kisuke said until he saw the money was put in his hand, which made him hand it over to the boy. Yes. Thank you, Kisuke, but what about that strange power you were talking about? He asked as Kisuke nodded. Yes. For you see, Iseei. Your power that you used earlier was that of the Fullbringers. You see, Fullbringers are spiritually aware humans born with the eponymous ability Fullbring, which allows them to manipulate the souls that reside in all physical matter. Their powers are constituted by hollow spiritual energy. Like all spiritually aware humans, Fullbringers can sense the spiritual energy of other spiritual beings, such as hollows, Shinigami, and other Fullbringers. However, they differ in that they each have a parent who survived a hollow attack before they were born. As a result, traces of the hollow's power remained in their mother's bodies, which were then passed on to them at the moment of their birth. Consequently, their powers more closely resemble a hollow's than those of a Shinigami. This shocked Iseei as he couldn't believe that his mother was attacked and survived a hollow attack until he continued to listen to Kisuke's lesson. Their ability, called Fullbringer Full Manifestation Art, enables them to manipulate the souls contained within matter. Everything, even rudimentary objects such as lampposts and chairs, possess a soul, however small. By using their power to pull on the soul, Fullbringers can manipulate the object's movement or even alter its physical characteristics. For example, Fullbringers could have a beverage assist them in drinking it by pulling on its soul, drawing it into their mouth. Likewise, by pulling on the soul of water, Fullbringers can walk across its surface without falling through. Many more feats are possible, making the technique highly versatile. Unlike other spiritual beings, Fullbringers use their power with their physical bodies. Because of this, they must train extensively to build up their stamina so they can use it properly. And while all Fullbringers are born with this power, the age at which they come to realize it varies. Your Fullbring in this case is actually those gloves you have on you. Kisuke said as he pointed to the gloves that Iseei wore, which shocked him until Kisuke explained their importance. By developing an affinity for a particular object, a Fullbringer can alter its form, granting powers that vary greatly among individuals. This affinity can be defined by one's love for the object in question, or simply by an overall fondness for it. As such, this power is usually awakened through a strong emotion associated with the object, such as pride. Those gloves of yours are special to you, so that's what allowed you to draw power from and awaken your Fullbring. Which is why I want to extend an offer to you. Kisuke said as he extended a hand out towards him. How would you like to become a Fullbring and unlock your Soul Reaper powers? Iseei looked at the hand and then looked back at these gloves before Kisuke spoke again. You don't have to make your decision now, but I would like to give you some knowledge that'll be important for you to know. You're not the Fullbringer since I've met a few before you, and they each had unique abilities per se, however, there's a problem with humans gaining powers like them and you. They're then targeted by the Soul Society or by another supernatural faction. You may not know this, but when entering this world, your best bet is to be aware of your surroundings. Unfortunately, this also means that your life won't be the same if you choose to accept my offer. Fullbringers can use a Soul Reaper's power or even take a Soul Reaper's power, but it's dangerous if you don't understand how to control or use that power. Seeing your fight with that hollow, I can say your Fullbringer is a close combat-oriented one, since it allows you to focus your physical strength and increase them as you fight your opponent. I can help you master this power, and all I ask for in exchange is to see what your power can do. However, by accepting my offer, you can't inform anyone of this training. Your parents. Your friends. No one. Trust me, I've seen others want to tell their friends or family, and it resulted in their deaths. Kisuke said with a monotonous dark voice, as if he witnessed the wrath of the Soul Society and the supernatural firsthand, which did instill some fear into Iseei. Still, all it did was strengthen his resolve to become stronger and learn more about this power he has within him. Iseei sighed heavily at this as he looked down with his hair covering his eyes and clenching his gloves before he nodded as he looked Kisuke in the eyes with an intense look in them. Understandable, I wouldn't want to drag them into this new world if I can help it. But as for my friends, they're not stupid. They're bound to find out eventually. Kisuke opened his fan before he stiffened his shoulders and asked Iseei with a stern voice. Then tell me, what do you think will happen if others use your friends against you? Will you fight them? As you are now, you'd be lucky even to defeat a Soul Reaper 3rd seed or a more experienced hollow. You were lucky in that fight with Hexapoda, the hollow you killed. It was a newborn, and it was a weak one. I don't think all hollows are like that. Trust me when I say this. There will always be a stronger and more terrifying monster than the one you faced. Iseei gritted his teeth as he barked at the shopkeeper. You don't think I know that my friends mean the world to me, and should they find out, I'll make myself disappear for good. Will it hurt me to keep myself hidden away? Yes, but at least it'll keep them safe. And those powerful hollows you mentioned just make my training hell, simple as that. But I want the right people to train me, you being a prime example. I don't want no half-assed training, and I want you to make me sweat and bleed. Kisuke looked at Iseei as if he was studying him before replying with a sigh. Heh. You, teenagers, are so reckless these days. Okay then Iseei Haidu. Let's see how tough you are. You can talk about a big game, but let me assure you. You'll have a big gap to cross before you are even ready to face the Soul Society. Hope you are ready for hell because I'm not going to hold back. Kisuke said before he instructed Iseei to follow him to an extensive training ground as he then saw the little girl from earlier as she bowed to him and introduced herself. Hello. My name is Urahara. It's a pleasure to meet you, Haidu-san. Please put on this protective gear. Urahara said as she laid some armor of sorts before Iseei began to put it on as he tested the gauntlets. This almost reminds me of what my sensei taught me when learning hand-to-hand combat, Iseei said to himself as he recalled his sensei's words before seeing Kisuke stand next to Urahara. Your first lesson. Spiritual energy. As a Fullbringer, you can draw upon spiritual energy around you and from within you and manipulate it with your Fullbring. You did it when facing the hollow and healing your stab wound. Now you need to try and draw it out once more, which is why you'll be fighting Urahara. All you need to do to pass this lesson is to land a single hit on Urahara. Fair warning, don't underestimate her. She may look like a cute girl, but she's far from being a fragile child. Iseei gulped at the warning before he readied himself while looking at the small girl before him. It's always the cute or quiet ones that are the most dangerous. Kisuke couldn't help but laugh at what Iseei said while Urahara blushed in embarrassment. Interesting saying there, Iseei. Well, good luck, though you might have a few broken ribs by the end of this. Wait, what? Iseei asked the shopkeeper before he saw Urahara right in front of his face as she had a blank look in her eyes. Time seemed to slow down for Iseei as he saw Urahara pull back her left fist and speak a single word that somehow shocked him to the core. Eliminate. She then sent a powerful left hook into his face that sent Iseei flying back a couple of feet before he rolled on the ground for a bit until he got back up. What the hell was that? There's no way that kid is human. What is she? Iseei asked himself as he saw Urahara look at him with the same cold look as she readied another left hook. Eliminate. She vanished for a second before appearing in front of Iseei, made him put up his gauntlets before the punch came and shattered them in an instant. Oh shit. Iseei said before Urahara sent a sickening right hook into Isei's stomach, which made his digestive system turn as his wound from his battle with the hollow hurt even more after it healed up as Iseei was sent flying into a couple of boulders before he wheezed heavily. Damn it. How am I supposed to even hit this kid if she's like Tsunade, but a lowly version of her? Iseei asked himself before he saw Urahara look at him with the same dead look as she replied with venom in her voice. I hate that name. Now die. Iseei immediately rolled out of the way to dodge a punch from Urahara, whose fist went right through the floor. Iseei turned very pale, his eyes were shaking. Is this cute little girl trying to murder me? I told you that this training wouldn't be easy. Didn't you say you wanted hellish training, right? So here's the first lesson. Never bite off more than you can chew, otherwise, it'll come back to bite you in the ass. Kisuke said as he looked at Iseei running from Urahara before seeing that Iseei still hadn't awakened his power. Could it have been a fluke? I was sure I saw him use spiritual energy in making his fist stronger. His rage at the hollow and his desire to save that little spirit helped him unlock his spiritual energy, but now he needs to try and bring out his Fullbringer to help himself in this battle. Show me what you are capable of, Iseei Haidu. Kisuke said to himself as he watched the two duke it out while Iseei tried to get his bearings together, but Urahara wasn't giving him room to breathe. Damn it. This kid is fast and strong. Come on, think. How did I do it last time? Iseei said to himself as he tried to figure out how to bring out that strange power he felt from his fight. Isei's eyes suddenly widened. That's it. It activated when I got super protective of that little spirit. It activated when I saw someone's life was on the line. Urahara charged at him to finish the battle as Iseei saw the girl disappear for a moment and be replaced by the hollow he faced earlier. Iseei then tried to think of the emotions from before. The rage of seeing that hollow harms that little spirit. The desire to save that spirit. The will to fight. Iseei channeled it into his fists as he felt some kind of power heal his wounds and make his fist stronger. He felt something click in him as a crimson aura enveloped his fists while his biker gloves began to shine brightly. This is it. I only got one shot, so I need to make it count. Iseei thought as he saw Urahara preparing to finish him. She then let out a bright violet aura surrounding her body as the ground caved in underneath her before she readied a right hook that was charging up with all of the power she was releasing before Iseei prepared himself. I only need to land one shot, then I'll pass, but this power is terrifying. And she's not even a soul reaper. Just what kind of monsters are in this place? Iseei asked himself as he saw Urahara glare at him with a look that meant death as she stomped into the ground hard as she then prepared to run right towards him. If you don't dodge, then you'll die. Nothing personal. She said before charging at him with the ground being destroyed behind her. Iseei stood his ground as he got into his stance once more and readied himself before he felt his spiritual energy ignite like a strengthening flame. Iseei looked at her, charging at him before his gloves shined brightly. At the same time, he sent a left hook towards Urahara that connected with her fist, which shocked all three of them as a blast from the collision almost pushed them both back until Urahara and Iseei looked at each other with a cool challenging look until the two began to clash fisticuffs. Kisuke watched from the two clash with their punches as Iseei focused on matching Urahara's punches and kicks that made Iseei pant heavily due to the weight and power behind them, but he could feel that somehow his body was getting stronger. That's 53. Iseei mentally said to himself as he matched Urahara's left kick before he felt his left fist become more robust as he sent it straight at Urahara's face, making her recoil stronger the punch, while Iseei smirked at the damage. 54, combo punch. Iseei said as Urahara made a deep of herself in the wall before Iseei felt him get weak and tired until Kisuke helped him stay steady. Not bad. And it's just as I thought. Your Fullbringer is connected to your gloves and it seems you were able to release all of the concentrated power you stored up in your punches and kicks with Urahara. I noticed this when you clashed with her punch just as she was about to finish you, which leads me to believe that I was correct in your power. Your Fullbringer is close combat oriented. Kisuke said as Iseei looked at his biker gloves and saw that they were in fine condition without as much as a scratch. He still felt the spiritual energy within him as he looked at his left fist before smiling at the name that came to his mind. Star Combo. That's the name of my Fullbringer. Iseei said as he did a few more punches at a boulder until he felt the same power build up within him as he charged up to a 25 combo. Iseei felt the power flow into his body until he focused it all into his left fist once more before firing it. Hokasuru. Iseei shouted as the concentrated power fired from his left hand like a massive blast of air following the punch as it destroyed a couple of the boulders in the path. The devastation from his attack shocked Fullbringer as he was in awe of the power he had. Holy shit. This is amazing. He said while looking at his gloves until a cane came down and struck his head. Ow. Iseei yelled as he tried to heal his head until he looked to see Kisuke looking at him with a stern face. Don't get cocky. The power you have is impressive, but you still have a long way to go before you are ready. All in all. Lesson 1. You passed. You unlocked your Fullbringer and your spiritual energy. Star Combo, huh? Not a bad name for power like yours. The shopkeeper said as Iseei was now taking the armor off of his body until he was forced to swallow something small, but it made him feel a lot better as his wounds began to heal and his energy was back. "What was that?" he asked as Kisuke replied with a cheerful smile. "It's a special pill that heals all wounds and replenishes your stamina. Now that you can use your Fullbring and your spiritual energy, it's time to begin lesson 2. He said as he brought out a large book. He handed it to Iseei as he read the title aloud. Keto Lessons 101. Bakudo and Heido for Dummies. Okay, but what's Keto? Iseei asked as Kisuke snapped his fan closed and replied. Didmer the Demon Arts is a form of Shinigami combat based on advanced spells. These spells are produced with strong Riryoku and fall into 2 categories. Hadm for direct attacks and Bakudm for battle support. It is one of the techniques in the Zankoski, the group of Shinigami primary combat skills. An incantation triggers Kidm spells. Experienced users can trigger them without an incantation, though the spell's effectiveness may be diminished. The Kidm Corps is a branch of Soul Society's military that excels in the mastery of Kidm. We have the former captain of the Keto Corps here, but he's busy for the moment, so I'll be teaching you. Due to your normal amount of spiritual energy, I'd say you can do incantations 1 to 30 or 40. Depending on your growth. Kisuke sat Iseei on a mat and opened the book before beginning the lesson. Now, most Keto spells are graded on a scale from 1 to 99, spells of the latter being the most powerful and the most difficult to perform. To use Kidm, a Shinigami must recite the specific incantation for the spell, which is often long and requires a few seconds to speak. The power of a spell relies on the power of the user, as even a low-level spell can be utterly devastating when utilized by a high-class Shinigami. He said as he demonstrated a Hadm number 4 by Akurai on a boulder that was obliterated instantly. Still, Iseei was amazed that Kisuke didn't even speak the chant which told him that he was powerful and possibly a captain. Kisuke smirked at this reaction as he got back into his lesson. Kidm can be used for practical purposes as well, such as lighting a dark hallway if the spell is tweaked in the right way, albeit with less power. However, always remember that no Kidm spell will last forever and it will erode with time, as with anything created by living things will die, because all living things will eventually die. Kisuke said before flipping the page to reveal the classes of Keto. There are 3 main types of Kidm. Binding spells, destruction spells, and healing spells. The first type of Keto. Bakudm. The Way of Binding is a supplementary spell that can immobilize an enemy or have an effect besides a direct strike. They may seem subtle, but these spells can give their users a tactical advantage when used properly. These are a broad category of defensive spells which block repel attacks or freezes enemies in place. This class of spells includes Kidm barriers and seals. He said as he showed Iseei Bakudo 4. Hanawa by binding him and the string-like spell that amazed Iseei until Kisuke dissipated the attack before he began to speak about the Keto barriers and seals. Barriers are Kekai. Focused spiritual energy formed into a solid form of energy. This energy can take on many shapes or colors as determined by the user. Barriers are protective and can be as simple as a barrier only protecting one direction or encompassing all sides of an area. Barriers can be used for containment and some barriers can be used offensively. Barriers can mask spiritual pressure and can make one spiritually and physically invisible. The strength of a barrier is dependent upon the power of the user. Weak barriers are easily breakable, while strong ones can last for centuries. Barriers created by noble blood are unbreakable by those of lesser status. Certain barriers can be placed beforehand and activated later, while others require certain artifacts and time to activate. Seals are FK. They are somewhat similar to barriers but far more powerful and require far more preparation to create. Seals can only be used by those of sufficient spiritual power and are meant to hold the most powerful and dangerous artifacts or beings. Seals are usually hard to break. Iseei nodded at this information as he took notes before the following class of Keto was introduced. Now Hadm Keto is known as the Way of Destruction. These Keto spells are offensive ones that inflict direct damage to the enemy. Their effectiveness differs depending on the user. It is said the effectiveness of the higher rank spells is beyond imagination. However, Heido spells are much more dangerous than normal Heido spells. These are known as Gesei Hadm spells. The Sacrificial Way of Destruction. It's a particular offensive spell like Hidden Chasm that requires the user to sacrifice a certain portion of themselves to use, but make no mistake that there are Keto spells that are forbidden even to mutter or use, which is why the head of the Keto Corps are the ones who may know of them, but only if they are given permission. The forbidden Keto are those which can manipulate space and time. Kisuke said as Iseei was shocked at this, not knowing that there are forbidden ones and other Keto spells that can be extremely dangerous for the user even to use. Hadm is also known as Healing Kidm or the Healing Spiritual Arts. These spells do not have known names, numbers, or incantations to cast and simply heal the target. As the user holds their hands above the patient's wounds, their palms glow with green, spiritual energy to facilitate healing. When one heals with regular healing kit, they perform Reiatsu restoration first. By doing so, one can attempt to recover the physical body using the patient's restored Reiatsu and the healer's external Reiatsu. Therefore, restoring the Reiatsu when the physical body is in a fully healed state is no trouble at all. Iseei was in awe as he took note of this before he nodded at the information until Kisu closed the book and stood up. Now, since you're a Fullbringer, you're still a human with limited spiritual energy, so you don't have much to use for the more powerful Kido, so it's best I simply teach you the basics of Kido, so you can get an understanding of the techniques, Kisu said as he then showed Iseei the first few basics. Kido spells that an average Soul Reaper can use until Iseei began to pant heavily after doing a couple of them, as the Fullbringer started to realize that the Kido spells took a lot more power than he would have thought. Damn. Those spells the chance Iseei painted until a warm water bottle was given to him as he took the offered water from Urahara before she helped him up. She was calm and the same cute girl he saw her as before their little spar, and luckily for the Fullbringer, she wasn't upset about being sent into the wall. Just as Iseei was about to ask Kisuke Urahara what he would do next, a rusted sword flew in the air before it was stabbed into the earth right in front of him. This freaked Iseei out until Kisuke walked up to the frightened boy and chuckled at him. Don't worry. It's a Zanpakuto. This is the weapon that a Soul Reaper uses when in battle. Normally they're born with one after they die, but in your case, you are still alive and human, so I figured you'd prefer being human. One thing I should tell you about this sword is that it had a master of its own until its previous owner abandoned it and left the blade to rust in the world of the living. That is until I managed to find it and bring it back to my home. Unfortunately, I couldn't wake up the spirit of the sword with my power, but Kisuke explained to Iseei the sword until Fullbringer looked at it and saw that it was a very depressing sword. There's so much sadness in the blade. I can feel it just standing near it. Iseei whispered to himself as he then grabbed the hilt of the blade and was shocked to see a person stand in front of him instead of the sword. The figure was a tall thin man with pale skin and shaggy dark brown hair and two bangs crossed over the bridge of his nose. Spiked purple ovals circled his turquoise-colored eyes. He possessed long fingernails, but they were much shorter, wearing a long white robe-like coat. The robe's collar is covered with thick fur, featuring a purple ascot fastened by a ruby brooch. The spirit wore a wide sash at his waist, decorated by a purple stripe. He wore boots with pointed tips and had purple manacles on his wrists. His fingers make a clicking sound whenever he curls and uncurls them. The spirit looked at Iseei and asked him a simple question. Would you abandon me? The spirit asked Iseei as looking at the eyes of the saddened soul, before Iseei lifted a hand and held it out towards him. I'll be honest here. I have little to no idea how I'm doing this or why I have these powers. Honestly, I feel like I did nothing to earn them because I wasn't a decent person back in my old home. I was a pervert and a member of the perverted trio. I was okay with just being ordinary compared to my friends and everyone else back home. I know what it's like to lose someone you care about due to me losing my childhood friend when I was simply 10 years old. I still had friends, but the bond I had with him was different. So, in conclusion, no. I won't abandon you. I need you, and I'll be honest once more by saying that I have no idea what's going to happen after you accept me, but I promise I'll listen and ask. I need all the help I can get when it comes to this world. Iseei said with no shame as he showed his soul to the spirit as the spirit looked at Iseei with calm eyes until he reached out to Iseei slowly with his left hand and grabbed the outstretched limb. My name is... Whisper. Muramasa. Iseei said as he felt a strong response as the sword began to shine brightly with its violet spiritual energy bonding with Isei's crimson spiritual energy until the sword began to take on a new form. Muramasa then bonded with Isei's biker gloves as Iseei saw a mechanism form on top of them. The biker gloves now had metallic fingertips with wire threads running through them. Iseei looked at them carefully before he made a motion with his hand and sent the strings out of them until they were wrapped around a boulder. Before he made a single motion with a few fingers and saw the boulder was sliced into pieces. Iseei was in awe of this until Kisuke looked at his Zanpakuto's new form and tapped his chin with his fan. Interesting. It seems that Muramasa seems to have joined your Fullbringer and taken a new form. Can you still summon him in sword form? Kisuke asked as Iseei nodded before deactivating his Shikai as the mechanisms on his gloves vanished and became a sword at his hip. Iseei looked at Muramasa's new form as he looked at Urahara before the shopkeeper, and Iseei learned what else he could do with his abilities with Muramasa. The spirit told Iseei that due to him being his second master, his abilities changed from how they were before, which confused Iseei at first, until Urahara explained the situation. It is the reflection of one soul, which means everyone is different no matter what because technically, you are wielding yourself. Perhaps the names could be the same, but not the power. so admittedly, there is a little sense of why it should work the same when having a new wielder, which has a new reflection for a different power that only the new wielder can use. Because ultimately, why continue to use power from the same wielder that might not be compatible for the new wielder? Iseei took note of this as Muramasa explained that due to him accepting Iseei as his new master, his powers became more string-based, which explained his unique appearance that Muramasa took on after using his Shikai. Iseei watched a lot of anime and read the manga, which helped him learn about string-based heroes and villains, which made him think of how to use the strings. The Shikai reminded Iseei of Lubbock from Akame ga Kill, since his weapon was crossed tails. Donquixo da Flamingo and his string fruit abilities, Alice Fuji from Arachnid, and Raju from Kill la Kill. Iseei tried to implement some of the powers he learned with Muramasa's strings. It was challenging at first since he was more accustomed to fighting with his star combo, which suited his style, but Muramasa explained that fighting with the strings would be helpful in the long run. It was the weekend, and Iseei informed his parents that he'd be studying at a friend's place. He knew he had to return home on Sunday, so his whole Saturday was taken up by his training and learning about his abilities, as well as bonding with Muramasa to better understand him. When Sunday rolled around, he spent the morning trying to better understand his Fullbringer and the abilities he had with Star Combo. He got the name from Derriere, a powerful demon from an anime he watched. Iseei studied the Star Combo power and learned that it was similar to how the demon used it in the show. Iseei needed to continue the combo to increase the power behind his punches and kicks, but if he breaks from the combo for 10 seconds, he would have to restart the count. Urahara helped Iseei with his star combo training, while Kisuke and Muramasa helped him learn to properly use his Shikai, since he had no idea how to control the strings without his partner's aid. Ake was the ability he gave to the power of star combo. It's a constant build-up of energy that he can unleash at his command. He could do things similar to Mana Burst, giving him extra movement, putting more power in his strikes, or unleashing Reishi attacks with his sword. Depending on what he did with the power, Iseei learned that he could spend this built-up energy within his Shikai from slashing to dodging and so much more. Some movements thoroughly used all of that energy to go into Reishi attacks. Iseei learned he could also use this to accelerate this process. Iseei got the idea from inspiration from Fajin from Boku no Hero Academia. Another ability he learned was Hokasuru, Bellowing Roar. Iseei could unleash all of his Shikai built-up force and pressure into a focused blast, either in a zero-like shot or slash. Doing this completely takes away all of the energy built up by Hake, restarting the process all over again. It was taxing on his body, but with the training, he could unleash 5 of them before passing out from exhaustion due to his body not having a load of energy like Kisuke or Urahara. Iseei then focused on what he could do with the strings in Muramasa's Shikai form, which got him thinking of copying other string-like users, including spiders. Iseei then asked Kisuke for a book on spiders, which surprised a shopkeeper because he saw Iseei practicing with the strings and seemed to be having fun controlling them. Iseei made weapons of sorts like a sword or a spear with his lines, while wrapping his body with the strings for armor. Iseei then focused on better understanding the usage of the series, like how Alice used Kumoido in battle. Iseei was able to learn how to extend the reach of the strings and realized that if he were to lose concentration, Muramasa would take over and control them, which relieved Iseei greatly since he knew that the web would help trap his enemies. Kisuke then had both Urahara and a mouthy annoying kid named Jin to fight Iseei, while he closed his eyes and only used the strings in his web. Iseei was struck a few times due to his lack of concentration, but after understanding the vibrations from the strings and how to sense others within the web, Iseei got better at dodging the attacks. Iseei even learned how to copy some of the string fruit and life fiber villains' abilities, such as the bullet string, mind stitching, and spider web. Iseei was grateful for Urahara Shoten for helping him learn about this power and asked if he could come back to train some more, which was a good idea for Kisuke and Tessai, since they wanted to assist the boy with his Kido training and his powers, since Kisuke could tell the kid had potential but needed to inform Iseei of why Fullbringers are wary of the Soul Society. Iseei was walking back to his home while thinking about Kisuke's words. "Hey, Urahara-sama. Why is it that Fullbringers are wary of Soul Reapers? I thought Soul Reapers couldn't kill humans." Iseei asked as he was curious about the past the Soul Reapers had with powered humans, which made Kisuke sigh at the question until he answered the question the boy asked him. Like most Fullbringers, Go was a spiritually aware human born with the latent powers of a Fullbring sometime after his parents were attacked by a hollow, leaving remnants of its power dwelling in his mother that he inherited at birth. He became the first substitute Shinigami and, in recognition of that, was given a substitute Shinigami badge by Captain Shkurm Take. During that time, he first met a young boy named Shkurm Tsukishima. After discovering that Tsukishima was alone like him, Go cheered him up and told him that from that day on, he would come with him. From then on, Go taught Tsukishima how to use his powers and fight. However, one day Go betrayed the Soul Society and went on a killing spree to steal more power off Shinigami. He then disappeared from Soul Society's gaze without a trace. He desired more power and wished to become even stronger to kill his captain, he admired and respected, but he failed in that, which is why Fullbringers are a threat to our people. However, that's what the Soul Society says nowadays. The true reason is that the same badge that Yukitake gave to Kugo was a limiter to restrict his powers, a tracking device to know where he was, a microphone so they can listen in on him, and finally a bomb should the day come that Yukitake was ordered to kill him. Isuke explains as it shocked Iseei to the core that even after all that Kugo did for them, he was betrayed by the same person he respected. This made Iseei wary of the Soul Reapers and if they could be trusted, but still, he thanked Urahara for answering his question before heading back to his training. Man. So a human with the powers similar to a Soul Reaper, and yet they can steal the powers of Soul Reapers too. Damn. That sounds amazing but risky. Especially if what he told me was true. But I've never seen one, so I should be fine. The Fullbringer said as he looked out into the town without knowing that tonight his life would change. I suggest we still be wary of them. There's no telling of when or who they will send a Soul Reaper to investigate you or try to take me back. My former master was a Kachiki, one of the noble clans of the Soul Society. I'm glad to be with a master once more, but we must be careful of how we go about this, since we need to be cautious of hollows attacking us. Muramasa said as Iseei nodded in agreement with his partner as he boarded the train that would take him home. While riding the train back home, he didn't sense that the woman was walking across the rooftops after she went her separate ways from her partner. Oh, this is so exciting. A few months in World of the Living, which means shopping and teasing a few men. Haha. The woman cheered excitedly before she found a peculiar aura from the train, which made her curious about it, so she did the only logical thing that came to her mind. She followed the aura. As she followed the train, she eventually saw the person with the said aura leave the station. She saw him as an average teenager with light brown hair and eyes like a doe, which made her smirk at an idea she had in mind for the boy. Let's have some fun, shall we? Asked Ranjiku, a mock question. Directly jumping to the foot of the pole she was on while watching him, with barely any effort on her face, she catwalked towards the brown-haired boy and stood directly in front of him and plucked her at him, knowing he would just pass by without any contact. Think of her surprised face that she must have had since when she opened her eyes, he was staring directly at her with a surprised look on his face. Thinking he would be looking at something behind her, she turned around only to get even more confused. If he is not looking at something, then why did he just stop? Willing to end her meaningless prank, she shrugged her shoulders and moved towards the light pole, only to stop in her tracks with a very unfamiliar voice. Well, isn't this a sight for sore eyes? First, a gorgeous woman comes at a seductive pace and stucks her at me, hoping to get a kiss, and just turns around, becoming all innocent. That was something I wasn't expecting tonight. Iseei said with a fascinating look on his face looking at the wide-eyed woman. Iseei was surprised by the sudden turn of events. Getting no reply, Iseei raised an eyebrow until the woman asked. You can't see me? Ranjiku asked, dumbly wholly stunned. This, in turn, caused Isei's eyes to narrow as his mind ran 1,000 miles, with Muramasa getting ready to aid his partner as Iseei was making sure his biker gloves were snug on his wrists. From her expression and question, she did not anticipate you being able to see her. This means that she is a Soul Reaper. Best we be cautious of her and ask why she's here. Agreed. Iseei said to the spirit as he agreed with his partner. But just as he was about to ask her a question, both of them heard many ripping sounds. Iseei watched as the woman's eyes widened, and she quickly grasped his hand. He was about to question her when his vision blurred, and the feeling of weightlessness overwhelmed him, but thanks to his training with Muramasa, it allowed his reflexes to kick in, thus he quickly regained his bearings. But when he looked around he was in a different location with a woman. Ranjiku said in haste as she looked behind them as if she was making sure they weren't followed. Listen, I don't know how you were able to see me, but you have to run fast, this place is perilous now. She said without giving Iseei a chance to reply to her as her body vanished in front of his very own eyes, but he saw a slight blur in her form, which meant she probably had used a high-speed technique of sorts. Suddenly an explosion occurred in the distance, and smoke rose. Not one to sit idly, Iseei quickly sprinted towards the apparent direction. As he rushed to the location, Muramasa spoke to him. This will be your first battle with hollows after your training. I suggest you use your star combo first before using me. Only if we have to, since we can't allow the Soul Reaper to know of my existence. Muramasa said as Iseei nodded in reply until he arrived at the woman's spot and saw two hollows stand right in front of them. Suddenly a bolt of electricity came out of nowhere and shouted right through the mask of the left one, shattering it to a million pieces before he faded away completely in the air. Iseei's head turned towards the apparent source and saw the previous beauty leaning heavily on the building wall, with blood flowing through her shoulder and staining her black dress while panting. Damn. They caught me off guard. She said as Iseei looked to see the other hollow snicker at her. The remaining hollow looked 2 to 3 times the height of most humans. He had an ape-like body that led him to stand on all fours. He had shaggy black fur around his neck and shoulders, as well as in 2 lines arcing toward the center of his on either side of his torso, and large black wings connected to his hands. His hollow mask was vertically long and narrow, with thick and exposed teeth framed by black flame-like markings, a skull-like nose, a prominent and circular chin, and a forehead with a half-circle indent at the top, as well as a long, uniquely shaped tongue split into 2 ends that form a circle. His hollow is located in the center of his dot. The hollow looked at the human and smiled as he spoke to him. "Oh. So you can see me? How interesting. Your soul does smell good, but I have to deal with this woman first, so I'll let you play with my friends," he said with a sadistic smile on his face as another hollow came out. Still, this one seemed to be different since it was a medium-sized bipedal green hollow with a mask resembling the beginning of a frog that has 2 long extensions coming out of the sides, reaching pigtails and yellow eyes. The hollow's arms were long and thin, resembling bones with a spherical joint attaching each forearm to its respective upper arm, encircled by 2 black streaks, with large humanoid hands. At the same time, its legs are thick and muscular at the haunches before tapering down to normal-sized feet. Its crotch was covered by 2 black marks encircling its thighs and a third running up its, where it disappears under a layered purple carapace that rises behind the hollow's head. Its hollow is located in the center of its dot. Iseei was readying himself for the fight as the frog leaped at him, making Iseei move back a bit as he dodged the ground slam by the large hollow. Okay. This acts like a frog, which means I need to be careful if it leaps at me. I need to deal with this thing quickly, but I can't use star combo unless I hit it, Iseei said to himself as the frog fired a tongue at him, making Iseei grab the language before he struggled in a game of tug-of-war against it. The hollow seemed stronger as it was slowly pulling Iseei toward him, which made him smirk before he let himself get hurt by the tongue. The frog smiled as it kept its jaw wide open to feast on its prey until a fist connected to the top of its head. Its head made a small crater as Iseei smirked at the damage. Here we go. 2. Iseei yelled as he continued to punch the hollow's skull into the ground while saying the count. 17. 18. 19. Iseei yelled as he pulled his left arm back until he struck the hollow's head before it burst into dust. This makes 20. Iseei said as he charged at the other hollow and stuck him, since he was shocked at the human strung the until the first struck his left shoulder before he heard a sickening crack that made the hollow shriek loudly until he moved away from the human by flying into the air. Damn. You are no ordinary human. You have some power, and that makes you a delightful meal, he said as he looked at the woman before narrowing his eyes at her until he looked at the boy. Until next time, human, he said as he flew away from the Soul Reaper and human until Iseei rushed over to her and helped her up. Hey, are you good? Iseei asked as Ranjiku nodded before she began to heal herself. I'll be fine, but you're not an ordinary human, are you? That power you used on the hollows was no technique I've seen before. Who are you? She asked as Iseei replied. Iseei Haidu. At your service, he said as the woman smiled in return before she began to nod off. Hey, don't fall asleep on me. Wake up, he yelled as he shook the woman but saw her fast asleep, which made Iseei groan in frustration at this until he pulled out his phone and typed in a number that he recently added to his contact list. Urahara-sensei. I need help. It's an emergency, Iseei said before hearing Muramasa's sigh in his mind. At least it was nice while it lasted. The next day. That's an odd dream, Mrs. Haidu. I know. I haven't had strange dreams like that since my college days. Anyway, you kids should get going, Miki said to the kids with a smile on her face until her eyes turned stern as she turned to her son. And stay out of trouble, young man. You're too young to go down fighting like that. Iseei nodded with a light sweat as he replied to his mother. Why yes, mom, I'll make sure to play it safe for a while. Miki smiled at this as both Iseei and Chizuru left the household while the female looked at the Fullbringer. Hey, I have a question about last week. What's got you so freaked out? I know you have your problems, but if you want to talk to me about it, it's fine, just don't lie to me. Tell me when you are ready. Okay. Chizuru said as Iseei looked at his friend and sighed before he replied. I promise I'll tell you, but once I have the words, he said as Chizuru smiled at him before they reached the school to see that Ichigo was a little on edge. Iseei ignored the feeling until Chizuru asked him about the biker gloves. Hey Iseei, what did your mom mean when she said no more fights? Were you a delinquent? She asked, surprised at the revelation until Iseei burst her bubble. Well yes and no, Iseei said as he looked at his biker gloves. To be honest, the fights only started because others thought I was in a gang due to my gloves. I wasn't the toughest or the scariest guy, so others tried to take the gloves and fight me, but I managed to beat them thanks to the martial arts training I took when I got here. The old man was a master of martial arts, and granted, he was old, but he was respected, feared, and very strong. I learned so much about martial arts from him and took them to heart. Eventually, after my scuffle with the delinquents, others came to fight me, but I never started any of them. I only fought when I defended myself. One day I met Chad and Ichigo fighting a bunch of delinquents that would cause trouble at the school. One of them recognized me, so I was dragged into it. I fought my battles and got bruised due to the numbers, but I survived. After that day, I became friends with the two of them. Delinquents still try to fight me from time to time. My mother wasn't happy about nor was my dad, but it helped me stay in shape and I even got to use my martial arts. He said Chizuru was shocked at the story until she asked about the old man. What happened to the old guy who trained you? He died. I was his only student since his dojo was intact, but no one bothered to come and try it out. After he died, he left me a book on the advanced techniques of martial arts, and I'm grateful to use some of them, but I made a vow I'd only use them to defend myself and protect, not to kill or harm others. However, one day I might have to break it if I have to face that Soul Reaper. He said in his mind before Muramasa agreed with his partner. As much as I prefer the peaceful path, from my experience, most Soul Reapers prefer to attack first and ask questions later. They wouldn't even listen to their comrades and just kill them if ordered to. They say they're not hollows, and yet they act like wild animals and hollows when they give in to their selfish desires. It sickens me when I think about it. The spirit said with disgust as he was frustrated and hated what the Soul Reapers did when he was still with his former master. Iseei listened to Muramasa's past and couldn't help but agree somewhat since he didn't have the same experience as his partner Kisuke did. Still, he had to admit that the woman from yesterday was amiable and tried to protect him as well. His thought process was broken as Chizuru spoke to him with a smile. He sounded like a very wise old man. Iseei nodded with a smile. That he was. I hope you're resting well, wherever you are, Bang-sensei. The two got into class as their teacher sat them all down. Class, today we have 2 new students, so be respectful to them. Achi-sensei said in her no shit-taking tone in the homeroom class. It would have been effective if most of the students' attention wasn't stuck to the said new student, who was smiling seductively. Many of the boys had hearts in their wide eyes, while the girls were comparing them to the newbies. They smiled as the small black-haired girl was a few cups short of her partner, who was large enough to make even Chizuru envious. Seeing that the situation was under control, albeit disturbingly, she motioned for the newbies to proceed with the introduction. Hello everyone, my name is Ranjiku Matsumoto. It's nice to meet you. My name is Rukia Kuchiki. Pleased to meet you all. Many boys fainted from their angelic voices, but were still respectful and mute. It's nice to meet you too, Ranjiku-chan. Rukia-chan. Balsam expressed it quite vocally. Kigo cough. Shut up, you dolt. Which just so happened to attract Itsuki, who with her usual self, beat the shit out of him, blacking him out with a bruised stomach. Achi-sensei's eye twitched at this, but she let it go for now. Okay. Ranjiku. Rukia. The two of you can go sit towards the left of the empty desks towards the window. Ranjiku and Rukia simply obliged, as their eyes were searching for a specific flame head and a brown-haired fellow. The two boys were shocked to see the girls for reasons they couldn't explain. Rukia walked to the seat next to Ichigo and held out a hand for him to shake, but he was pale as if a terrifying message was written on it until Iseei was met with Ranjiku standing next to him until she hugged him in her bust. Aw. Thanks for helping me out yesterday. I'm grateful to you for saving my life. She said while Chizuru growled at her and cleared her throat. Hey. You're killing him with your watermelons. She said as Ranjiku looked at Iseei and pulled him out as he had a happy face, while Ranjiku just simply smiled at his reaction. Oops. Sorry, but I do want to thank you, but how? She pondered until she hit her open left hand with a tiny fist as she had an idea. Would you like to feel them? She asked as she hefted her massive bust up for Iseei to blush at the offer until a ruler slapped Ranjiku's hand as she winced. Oh that's mean. She shrunk under the teacher's glare as she spoke to her. No illicit sexual activities in this school. And order a larger shirt for your uniform. No skinship, which means no boob window. She barked at the student, which made Ranjiku pout as she replied. Aw, but teaching the class seems to like it. She said while gesturing to the guys who whistled at her, which made her wave at them as if she was a princess until the teacher glared at her with tick marks appearing on her forehead. Do you want detention on your first day? She asked in a dark voice which made the students shiver in fear, including Rukia, until Ranjiku shook her head. No ma'am. Good. Mr. Haidu. Wake up. She said as Chizuru shook Iseei awake as he cleared his throat with a blush. Sorry, ma'am. H her assets. I know. Clear your mind. Yes, ma'am, Iseei said as he put his head on his desk while Chizuru patted his back in comfort. Holy crap, those things are bigger than I thought they were. Iseei had steam rising from his head, making Chizuru wince as she pulled her hand back swiftly. Fuck, that's hot. Ranjiku smiled at him before she yelped and the teacher slammed a ruler on her desk. Pay attention. Now let's continue from yesterday. The teacher said as she began the lesson while Iseei was still recovering from the attack by Ranjiku. Muramasa looked at the bust that sent his partner into such a state and pondered how this weapon was very effective against Iseei. I'll have to study and observe those weapons. If they could send my partner into this state, then they would be dangerous. Later lunchtime. Okay, so let me get this straight. You and Rukia are both here to deal with a large group of hollows messing with the souls of Karakura town. Iseei asked as he and Ichigo were having lunch with the two soul reapers, while Rukia answered. That's correct. Unfortunately, due to Ichigo taking the majority of my power, he's still a soul reaper and I need to conserve my spiritual energy and Ikigai. Normally we can't be seen by humans, but with this, we can blend in naturally. I can't use much of my power so that Ichigo will be doing my job for me. This shocked both Ichigo and Iseei as Ichigo stood up. Nope. Not going to happen. Yesterday was just to save my parents. Not being a soul reaper. Oh. We were also going to instruct Iseei to join us as well. Rukia said as Iseei backed away. Thanks, but no thanks. I just started training and I'm human, so that won't be much help. Iseei said as he tried to get out of this before Ranjiku smiled at him coyly, making Iseei groan in his face as he was weak against it. The two boys were still shocked at the situation they were in since they were dragged to the rooftop by the girls. Flashback. At the start of lunch. As the bell rang, signaling the start of lunch hour, Kigo dashed towards Ranjiku and Rukia to greet her, only to lose his conscious courtesy of Tatsuki's backhand. Well, that usually doesn't have the desired effect in the past. After Tatsuki's punch which had enough force to send him reeling back, Kigo's head banged against Chad's rock solid and he subsequently lost to the world while Chad just scratched the said spot. Many onlookers gulped, quite wary of Chad's power now. Hello, Matsumoto-san. Rukia-san. Orihim's cheerful voice broke Ranjiku out of her trance, thinking about Iseei. Huh? Oh, hello, she trailed before she quickly understood her mistake as she bumped herself over her head a little, looking very adorable. Oh, sorry. My name is Orihim Inoue. Nice to meet you. Ranjiku smiled a little in goodwill and quietly noted that Orihim has more than average. Nice to meet you too, Orihim-chan. This is Tatsuki Arasawa, my best friend. Yo. He is Yasutora Sato, but we all call him Chad. Inoue introduced the Mexican, who replied with a grunt. My name is Mizuro. It's a pleasure to meet you, Matsumoto-san. Ranjiku, seeing his sly smile, replied with her small fake smile, oh, the pleasure is all mine. And the out-of-the-world pervert goes by the name Asano Kigo. It would do good to you to remain as far as you can from him along with someone else. Tatsuki blurted out, slipping praises of Kigo accidentally. Seeing that all introductions were over without trouble. Oh. What a beauty. Seemingly out of nowhere, a strong arm came and took hold of Ranjiku's soft hand and held them in a firm grip. Everybody's head whipped towards the owner of the apparent arm, only for some to scowl, some smiled, and some were just plain indifferent. Oh, they said someone is here, muttered Tatsuki with a dark look. Iseei, who ignored the karate master's words, introduced himself. Hello, my name is Iseei Haidu. Future harem king. Lord of lust and the chancellor of culinary skills. He told Ranjiku, which made Orihim and Chizuru giggle at his introduction, while Chad stopped Tatsuki from attacking Iseei. Flashback end. And now. Here we are. Muramasa said as Iseei and Ichigo were then shown a photograph of the hollow Iseei saw last night. This is Shrieker. A hollow that's killed two soul reapers who were friends of mine. We have information that he's working with other hollows. We don't know what their plans are, but we do know Shrieker isn't working alone. He's working with someone much stronger than him. And trust me, Shrieker isn't one to take lightly. He can kill you both before you know what hit you. Iseei then remembered that little girl's spirit he met 2 nights ago when the hollow attacked him. I hope that little one is okay, it would be nice to see her again if possible. Okay, then what do we do? Ichigo asked as Rukia replied. Simple. Train. It's obvious that you have a large amount of spiritual energy, but Iseei has a normal amount of power which puts him around a lower-seated member. You seem to be learning Kido so Ranjiku can teach you. I'll be helping Ichigo with his swordsmanship. Rukia as Ranjiku looked at Iseei. I look forward to working with you. She said as she hugged Iseei fondly until Iseei heard her giggling as she laughed out loud. I'm sorry but what you said before in class hahaha. Okay. Laugh it up, but I will achieve that dream someday. Iseei said, defending his dream before he asked her a question. From what you told me earlier, your mission was to kill Grand and that the number of your kills would be recorded. So someone has to do Rukia's job, otherwise, the Soul Society would know your partner's predicament and we do not want that to happen, and also, I can protect the souls. So I am ready to do it, but under certain conditions. Iseei said, but in the end, his voice became sharp and cold to make it very important. What are your terms? Ranjiku asked uncertainty. Though she was glad of his decision, his tone left no room for argument and that threatened her. First, I want to know each and everything that happens while working together. No hiding. Secondly, no one, and I mean no one from my family or friends, knows the harm and is as far from it as possible. Is that acceptable? Iseei asked as Ranjiku nodded quickly. The terms were acceptable. Seeing that his words reached her brain, Iseei gave her a big smile and handshake. Pleasure doing business with you, Ranjiku-chan. Which made Ranjiku chuckle in response. Oh, the pleasure is all mine. After classes. The rest of the class was boring as hell apart from the rumor that Ranjiku and Iseei are an item, while Ichigo and Rukia seemed to be in a complicated relationship. With a sigh, Ranjiku walked towards her destination and gave a silent groan, as almost half the male body of her class were sneaking up on her and indeed were doing a rather pathetic job, but she put the issue in the back of her mind and thought of all the stories. They were so different, and what is that creamy substance with a candle on top? Her inspection halted as a voice she quickly recognized spoke to her. What are you doing here, Ranjiku-chan? Iseei asked as he stood by Ranjiku, who was, for some reason, intently watching the cake shop. Her eyes widened as she jumped a foot in the air, surprised. Iseei laughed a bit in amusement from her reaction, watching her pout at him. You surprised me there, Iseei-kun. And to answer your question, I was just looking at the item there. She said, pointing towards a chocolate cake. We don't have those things in Soup Society. Those, my dear Ranjiku-chan, are known as cakes in the human world. They are very soft and sweet to eat and are mostly eaten on occasions. Would you like some? He asked, which made Ranjiku grab his hands before dragging him into the store, which made him happy that he could help her out. While they were chatting in the store, Ranjiku completely forgot about the stalking boys, who were crying in tears from that moment when they saw Iseei walking towards the blonde-haired bimbo. The message was clear to them as Iseei sent a glare at the annoying stalker while cracking his knuckles. After their little cake date, Iseei checked his phone for the time and winced at how late it was. Thanks for a wonderful time, Ranjiku-chan, but I should get home, though. My mom will think I'm in a fight if I'm late again. He said with a heavy sigh before Ranjiku cheered at this. Oh, that's great. I've wanted to meet my new family. She said excitedly while Iseei looked at her, surprised before asking dumbly. Wait, what? Later? And that's why we agreed to take Ranjiku in while she's staying. Isn't she the best, Iseei? Miki asked her son while Ranjiku cheered happily and thanked her. Oh, thank you Mrs. Haidu. Please call me mom. Thank you mommy. Aw. Such manners. Miki said as the two females began to gush at the idea of living together until Goro patted his son's back with a smile on his face. So when did you two meet? Including her in your harem? Dad. We just met. Iseei yelled back at him until they started to debate while not noticing a spirit, looked at the scene, and smiled seeing Iseei arguing with his father while the orange-haired woman was chatting with Miki happily. The spirit didn't even feel or notice the shadow approaching it until a hand was clamped on his mouth as she was pulled away into darkness. It seems I have something to draw the woman to me. Thank you, little girl. The creature said as the girl was scared of the monster holding her as she was then knocked unconscious. The beast then moved away from the home until it went back to the Karakura cemetery as the hollow came and put the spirit in a shrine before turning to see the other hollow behind it. Ah, Lord Fisher. I come with a new spirit. I added it to the others. It said as the one known as Fisher smiled at this as he then walked to see Shrieker speaking to another hollow that looked human since it was a spirit that was still a hollow but had no mask on its face while he leaned on a tree's trunk. That's interesting. So a human is able to dislocate your shoulder. Not bad. Perhaps he can give me a fun fight. The warrior said as he looked at his sword until a giant centipede-like hollow spoke to him. Don't be a fool, Sasaki. You may be a soul while retaining your human form, but I know that even you can get too caught up in battle. Remember why you are here. To guard the cemetery. It said a feminine voice until Fisher walked to the three. That's enough, you three. Need I remind you that if we all wish to reach more extraordinary power, we will need many sacrifices. Fisher said as Shrieker nodded while the centipede groaned but nodded before Fisher asked her. Kurumi. Tell me. Is the numb chandelier in place? He wondered as the now named Kurumi nodded as she replied. Oh yes. She's ready and I assure you that she'll give us some beautiful soldiers and pawns we can use for the ritual. She laughed sinisterly as the scene changed to the school with a few staff and students leaving the premises. Higo groaned in frustration while leaving the school until he felt something hit him as he thought numb before collapsing on the ground. A tentacle then moved towards his body and picked him up before bringing him to the rooftop where a massive creature was. The animal was a large hollow whose body was composed of 12 giant lavender tentacles of sufficient length for her to prop herself up between buildings. The mask resembled a jellyfish, with 6 appendages at the bottom and 3 circles of protrusions at the top, and had heart-shaped openings around her eyes, as well as long teeth with no or gums. The hollow is above the mask at the meeting point of its tentacles. Yes. Yes. Just a couple of more humans, then we'll have more than enough spirits to have so much more power. She said in a cold but happy voice as she enjoyed sucking the soul out of the body, before bringing more unfortunate souls to the roof. It had been a month since Ranjiku and Rukia came to Karakura High, and honestly, the two were happy to be here since they enjoyed going to school and attending classes like normal teenagers. They even wanted the small group of friends they made. Orihime, Tatsuki Chad, Ichigo, Chizuru, and Iseei. The two Soul Reapers have been helping Ichigo and Iseei with their powers. They have fought many hollows, such as Orihime's brother, Acidwire, a giant hollow that was rampaging in the park. And a few other small fries that Ichigo dealt with quickly with his oversized Zanpakuto, while Iseei was learning more about his Fullbringer and Muramasa as he tried to get faster and stronger with his string attacks since he wasn't as strong as Ichigo, so he had to improvise and work around his weaknesses. A few other events happened in the town, such as Ranjiku and Ichigo accidentally eating a mod soul candy that made their bodies act odd. Ranjiku was a perverted one named Kon. At the same time, the other one Ichigo consumed was a female one who made Iseei and Rukia snicker at this, as they recorded Ichigo being embarrassed like a teenage girl until he swiped the camera from them and erased it. However, a few teachers and students landed in the hospital late, but the problem was that their eyes were blank and white, as if they were already dead. The Soul Society told them to investigate the school, but little did they know that today, 3 battles would take place. This is where our story begins as Orihime, Chad, and Tatsuki were into the school as they were coming to help with the school cleanup around campus. Tatsuki grumbled lightly as she helped clean up the school. Honestly, that pervert and prude could have helped us out today. But no, Iseei wanted to follow Ranjiku like a lost puppy, while Ichigo had plans with Rukia. Chad let out a small nervous chuckle as a bead of sweat rolled down his head, while Orihime giggled. It's not that big of a deal, Tatsuki. Ice-kun just wanted to get to know Giku-chan. Plus, Ichigo-kun and Rukia-chan said they had homework to do. Tatsuki scoffed. And the prude wanted to do his homework for once. I'm genuinely shocked. Orihime shook her head lightly at her friend's accusations, as she and Chad knew that Ichigo was one of the top 10 most intelligent people in their class. He may look like a delinquent, but he is astute when he needs to be. As they got near the school, a strange aura filled the air as the 3 were frozen still, as a groan was heard from inside the school. Tatsuki ran up to the door and kicked it open to see the missing students and teachers like zombies from a movie, before they turned to Tatsuki and the others. A mark on a zombie's face turned to the trio as the eyes turned dark yellow for a moment until an androgynous voice left the man's mouth. Ah. The cleanup crew is here, which means more souls and soldiers for us. Bring them to me. The possessed zombie said as the other zombies grunted in confirmation until they began to walk towards them while grumbling. Tatsuki cursed under her breath before she grabbed Orihime's wrist and ran off with her, Chad not too far behind. Tatsuki, what's going on? From the looks of things, the bastard behind the missing people looked like they had their souls taken from them. What the fuck is this, High School of the Dead? Chad grunted. Less talking, more running. The two got near the gate, but they were shocked as they tried to cross it, but the possessed one laughed at their attempt to leave. Don't bother. As long as I'm alive, the barrier will stay up, making you 3 all mine. Surrender, and I'll make it painless for you all. As best as I can do, that is. The voice said as the zombies began to walk towards them until Chad grunted as his right arm somehow transformed and sent a massive blast of energy at the zombies, throwing them back, especially the possessed one, before an opening was made. Let's go. I know where we can hide. Chad said as Tatsuki and Orihime were shocked but ran with Chad as they saw the zombies begin to get back up. Shit. What the hell was that, and how are these guys still alive after that? What are you now, Goku? I promise to explain everything later. We need to figure out how we'll get out of here. Tatsuki sighed before she spoke. That possessed person, that as long as he is alive, we cannot escape. So we just need to find the guy, simple as that. Chad sweated lightly. I'm afraid it won't be that easy. I have a pretty good feeling as to what's doing this. Chad said as they hid in the gym locker room before Chad revealed his transformed arm. I'll only say that this happened to me after I was protecting Ichigo's sister, Karen, from what looked like some kind of monster that I was able to feel. I couldn't see it, but I could feel its presence. With this arm, I can send powerful blows with my right arm, but I can only do it up to 5 times a day. After that, I'll collapse. Which means we need weapons to defend ourselves. I can fight with my karate, but Urahara, I think you should hide here until we get back. Urahara could only nod, but she felt terrible that she couldn't do anything to help Chad and Tatsuki. Why do I have to be so weak and helpless? I want to help them since Chad can only use his arm 4 more times now, and I don't know how much stamina Tatsuki has before she tires herself out. But still, I can't do anything besides be a damsel in distress. Urahara said as she grabbed her dress until Tatsuki put a kendo sword in her friend's hands. Remember. If you are in trouble, then you must fight. Otherwise, you'll be taken to their boss. Stay here and be quiet, but most importantly, don't let anyone in this room unless it's us. Got it? Tatsuki asked as Urahara nodded before the two left the locker room until Urahara began to curl up and sigh as she began to wait for her friends to come back. I can be strong and helpful too, Urahara said as she swung her sword like a baseball bat, but then accidentally hit her head, making her dizzy a bit before collapsing on the floor with mini Iseeis on top of her head, dancing with stars. Pretty stars. With Tatsuki and Chad. Tatsuki kicked another mindless zombie in the face, while Chad focused on using his left arm to punch some out of the way. He didn't plan on wasting the remaining 4 punches on his right arm. Damn. How many of these guys are there? I don't know, but they seem to be coming from upstairs, Chad said as he saw more come from the rooftop stairway until he saw an open window and a pole before asking Tatsuki. Tatsuki. Are you scared of heights, and are you good at climbing? Can I climb? Yes, I can climb, but what does that have to do with Tatsuki yelled before Chad pushed the zombies out of the way before heaved Tatsuki over his left shoulder. Get ready to fly, Chad said as he tossed Tatsuki to the flagpole out of the window, while the karate master yelled in fear before she caught the pole. You ass. I'm killing you after this whole shit is done. Quit whining and start climbing unless you want to come back down and help. Tatsuki sweated lightly before she sighed and started climbing. You owe me, jackass. Tatsuki yelled back as she began to near the rooftop before her eyes narrowed slightly as she saw a massive shadowy blob on top of the school roof. It had a tentacle in a human's mouth before the human groaned and twitched like crazy until a small orb left the person's mouth. The shadow blob took the sphere and placed it in some net until she cheered at her new addition. The mouth began to move, but Tatsuki could only understand a few words the creature was saying. Find humans, collect souls, kill them if need be. Tatsuki narrowed her eyes at this before she scowled. You better get up here soon, Chad, cause I think you're the only one who will do anything to this thing. Tatsuki then thought back to Urahara and she clenched her fist. Please be safe, Urahara. I already know that pervert would never forgive me if you got hurt. Tatsuki said as she was trying to climb back down until a hand grabbed her wrist and edged a bit until Tatsuki saw it try to lean into her. Tatsuki then punched the zombie's head before using her martial arts skills to knock the zombie around. She smirked at this before a hand grabbed her leg. Ah. Let my guard down for a moment. Relax and keep your voice down. Tatsuki looked down to see it was just Chad. She scowled at him. Are you trying to give me a heart attack? Relax, I said. Tatsuki nodded as she spoke to him. It's some shadow blob on top of the school, but it seems to be able to take something out of us. It said it's here to collect souls, but why it's collecting them, I don't know. Chad went into thought before he sighed and pulled out his phone. Chad then hit a few buttons before putting it to his ear. Chad waited for a moment before the phone clicked. Hey Chad. What's going on? It seems we can still call people. We have a bit of a situation and we could use your guidance. Huh. Alright then, who's with you? Tatsuki. I see, alright, tell me what the situation is. Chad was about to say it until some static was heard on the other side. Hello? Chad asked before Tatsuki swiped it and hissed at the static. Shit. We're on our own. Tatsuki growled as she didn't notice her arms glowed dimly as they became shiny like steel. Chad, however, noticed it but decided not to say anything. This is indeed quite bad, Chad said as he took his phone back from Tatsuki and pocketed the device. But we need to come up with a plan. With Iseei. Iseei winced as he whipped the phone away from his ear. Gah. Damn static. Hey, you okay, Iseei? Ranjiku asked as she came back with some smoothies for them both. They were on patrol today as Ichigo and Rukia needed to finish some homework for a project they were working on. Iseei looked to see Ranjiku before taking his raspberry smoothie and drinking the sweet beverage until Ranjiku got some pineapple on her shirt. Dang it. This is one of my favorites. Ranjiku said as she used some napkins to clean it up before fanning her shirt as she felt her getting hot. Man, my girls are on fire today. I thought it wasn't even summer yet. Iseei couldn't help but stare at Ranjiku's and it was almost like they were tempting him to lick and Iseei swiftly slapped himself. You've only known the woman for a month. Seriously, Iseei. He then looked up to see Ranjiku's teasing face before she smiled at him. What's wrong, Iseei? Distracted? She asked as Iseei looked away from her while trying to keep the blush down. And it was Chad. He was going to tell me something, but we got cut off. Lousy reception. Iseei grumbled as he checked his phone before Ranjiku giggled at Isei's blushing face before asking him. Say Iseei, would you want to date me if I was a permanent resident? I mean, if I could stay, that is. It's just that after my assignment Rukia and I would leave Karakura town. She said before sipping her smoothie with a sad look as Iseei looked at her, concerned. Well, I would, but are you sure you can? I mean, if what you said about your council is true, then won't they be suspicious of you spending a lot of time with a human that has spiritual energy and powers similar to you guys? Ranjiku sighed. It's hard to say but I don't care. Ranjiku hugged Iseei in her bosom, making him blush and look up at her. Ranjiku gave Iseei a sad smile. During this month, I've got to see many sides of you that few people get to see. You're kind, funny, and very protective. Not to mention perverted, which I happen to enjoy. Iseei looked away with a blush, making Ranjiku chuckle. All of those traits are what makes you you. And I genuinely like you, Iseei. Iseei was surprised by the confession of the Soul Reaper until he was released from the boot prison. Well, to be honest, I like you too. When we first met, you reminded me of a ditzy bimbo, but I can see you are a bit ditzy, but still a kind person who's not the sharpest tool, but a loyal and funny friend who can cheer people up with her smile. You love to tease to get others to warm up to you, and you are a bit more of a pervert than me, since you tried to bathe with me. He said as Ranjiku giggled at the memory until Iseei continued. And I like you too, Ranjiku, but I'm worried what they'll do to you once they learn what happened to you and Rukia. True, but we'll cross that bridge when the time comes. Let's enjoy today and tomorrow as we are together now. Plus, I wanted to apologize for Khan teasing you with my body and to cause so much trouble when he streaked through the town in my birthday suit. Hey, I've never seen a hollow get killed by a bloody nose. That was hilarious. Ha 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 ha. Ranjiku giggled lightly before Iseei smiled. But hey, that means I get to date your perverted self. Ranjiku grinned. So you'd be fine having Khan and me? Iseei shrugged. Sure, of course, I'll have to get used to Khan, though. Seriously, I think they might be more perverted than me, saying something. Ranjiku laughed at this as she recalled the perverted mod soul before her phone went off as a massive seal took place and froze the humans in the area. Iseei and Ranjiku stood up as sizable multiple heads as hollow came out of a crack in the air. As it sniffed the air and smiled at the humans around it. So many souls. So many delicious souls to satisfy me. It said before opening its 3 mouths to suck in the souls of nearby humans as more and more hollows came out of other holes in space, shocking Iseei and Ranjiku. What's going on? Ranjiku. Oh no. Someone used a hollow bait. Isei's eyes widened. Someone used a what? Who the fuck would he be stupid enough to use that? Ranjiku's eyes turned stern before she turned to Iseei. You need to get out of here. This is a type of hollow you are not ready to face, especially with other hollows helping it. What do you mean? I can help. Ranjiku shook her head as she swallowed Khan before entering her Soul Reaper attire. No. These guys aren't ordinary hollows. They are from Hueco Mundo. Now run. Khan, make sure he gets out of here and take him someplace safe. Ranjiku told the mod soul as Khan nodded before dragging Iseei away from the lieutenant as she breathed deeply. Growl Hineko. She whispered as her blade became ashed before sending it towards the incoming hollows and slicing off their necks until a few began to fire Zeros at her, which forced Ranjiku to get on the defensive as she tried to get to the leader hollow, which was the multi-faced hollow consuming souls. Still, the smaller ones wouldn't let her get close. Shit. Hopefully, Rukia and Ichigo are seeing this. Iseei and Khan ran away from the battle near the Karakura cemetery before stopping to catch their breath. We should be safe here. Khan panted heavily as he fanned himself with his dainty hand before seeing Iseei breathing while looking at the battle. I should be helping her, not running away like a coward, Iseei growled as he wanted to run back, but the sound of footsteps caught their attention. Oh? So you must be the Soul Reaper and human Shrieker told us about. The voice said as the duo turned to see a person who looked like a samurai swordsman with long indigo hair tied into a ponytail and indigo eyes. He wore a traditional light purple Yuminori hakama and kimono, light purple tabi, black zori with purple haori, and carried his sword on his back. Iseei had a bad feeling about this guy and immediately got in front of Khan. Shrieker. What do you may owe for fuck's sake, you're helping the hollows. A human soul. The samurai made a so-so motion with his left hand before answering Isei's question. Well, it's more of a partnership. You see, I am a mere soul bound to this cemetery and I can't pass on, so I require souls to keep my physical form and strength up. The hollow gives me souls to stay intact and in return, I defend the cemetery. It would be wise for you to leave before I kill you. I can tell you are a beginner with a sword and have the powers of one of those unique humans I killed before. Normally I don't kill unless I have to, but let's say I've taken more lives than you've been alive, so heed my warning and leave this place. Or you can stay and watch the show coming soon to Karakura town. He said as he gazed into the city, seeing the many hollows get killed by either a powerful blast of spiritual energy, an arrow, or strangely a cloaked individual running on the rooftops, killing them quickly. Iseei looked where the man looked before he turned back to the samurai. I'm afraid I can't just leave if you're working for the enemy. I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to stop you. Khan, stay back, this is a battle between samurai. Iseei took his mod before he entered his Soul Reaper attire. Khan quickly brought Isei's body out of the way while the man sighed. I warned you, boy, now I shall cut you down by my blade. Iseei sighed before speaking again. Before we begin, it's common courtesy to give one's name before a battle. My name is Iseei Haidu, Fullbringer, and wielder of Muramasa. The samurai nodded in acceptance before unsheathing his blade, glistening in the moonlight. I am the nameless samurai, but you may call me Sasaki Kijiro. He said before getting into a stance as Iseei readied his biker gloves that have protection on them now, before a leaf fell into a small puddle. Fuakaza vs. Ringoku battle soundtrack. Iseei ran towards Sasaki and clashed with his sword as the Fullbringer tried to break the sword with his fists. Still, the samurai merely blocked them with ease as he had a bored look in his eyes before he attacked with a kick. He sent Iseei back with a sidekick, making Iseei stop it before clenching his fists. In that case, Iseei said as he had his hake come forth and strengthen his hands and feet before clashing with Sasaki again as the samurai still blocked the attacks until the samurai kicked some leaves up with a wind from his slash. They blinded Iseei until Sasaki appeared behind him, sheathing his sword. You lose. Jink. Iseei gasped as he felt an invisible blade slice his stomach until he got on one knee. He panted heavily before grabbing his zanpakuto. Whisper, Muramasa, Iseei whispered as his gloves changed to his shikai before using his strings to tie up his injury, surprising Sasaki. Interesting. I've never seen an ability like that. Maybe this won't be so boring after all. Iseei snarled. Do not underestimate me, just because I'm new to this whole supernatural thing. Iseei stood up before whipping his strings on the ground, leaving a few marks. Now, who wants daddy's belt? Sasaki smirked before rushing to Iseei. He threw a few daggers at Sasaki, which the samurai deflected with ease until Iseei moved away quickly from the slash as he weaved a spear made of string before twirling it. Let's dance, Sasaki, Iseei said challengingly as he clashed with Sasaki's sword, but as they fought, Iseei was starting to feel that Sasaki was holding back as they parted from each other until Sasaki stood up. Interesting. Using your strings to make yourself armor, stitch your wounds, and craft weapons. Not bad, but it's not enough. Sasaki said as he got into a stance before holding his blade out to show its entire length. Allow me to show you what real swordsmanship is. Secret technique. Iseei readied as he felt something coming at him until the blade moved so fast he couldn't track it. Turning swallow strike. 3 slashes moved at a fast pace which cut into Iseei before Sasaki sheathed his blade. Iseei still felt the pain before Khan came up to him and helped him up. Hold it. Iseei yelled as he glared at Sasaki, who had his back turned to them. You only struck me with the back of the sword. Why? Iseei asked as Sasaki didn't turn back but replied to him. You are not worthy of facing my full strength. Until you learn how to actually wield a sword instead of relying on your fists, then you'll never beat me. Anyway, you are about to miss the show. Sasaki said as a roar echoed through the air. The power behind the roar scared both Iseei and Khan as they turned to see a massive crack forming in the air. What is that? That is something more powerful than a hollow. Hueco Mundo. The land of hollows is home to more terrifying monsters than the ones you face here. Allow me to introduce you to Mino's Grand. Sasaki said as a large mask came out with a tall black cloak covering its whole body. The mask had 2 eye holes and a large nose until it opened its jaw, roaring into the air with its hands spread out, as if it was calling to the other hollows in the town to come to its presence. Iseei was now in full panic mode. Orihime, Tatsuki, and Chad were now at the school, more than likely trying their hardest to survive. Ranjiku was fighting off a bunch of hollows and a mini Jillian, and was probably being given a hard time by the weaker hollows. And Ichigo and Rukia were probably fighting as well and possibly getting overwhelmed. No. I can't lose here. So many of my friends are probably fighting their hardest out there, and they might get hurt or worse if I cannot win this fight. Partner. You need to calm down and think. There's no need to be overwhelmed by this monster. If you can't even stand face to face with a monster like this, then I highly doubt you can clash with my superior. Sasaki said as he looked at the Minos as if ignoring them until a crackling sound echoed in the cemetery before a significant figure landed behind Sasaki. Well. If it isn't that damn human who caught me off guard. How pathetic. Taken down by a mere spirit. Ha. You are not worth the effort. Shrieker said as he slapped Khan away as he struggled to stand up before Iseei was held down by one of Shrieker's claws. You coward. Having Sasaki do the dirty work for you? Got to play dirty sometimes, but don't worry about your friends. I'll make sure to see them die for you. Shrieker said as he held Iseei down until a new voice entered the area. Let them go before I hit your head this time. The voice said as an arrow flew and pierced Shrieker's mask, making him scream in pain until they all looked at the cloaked individual in the tree standing on a branch as the wind made them look mystical. It's been a long time since Iseei Haidu. I'm glad to see you well. The figure removed the hood as they revealed themselves, shocking Iseei. Shido-sama. What are you doing here? Iseei asked, surprised as Khan asked him. You know that guy? Sure do. He's Irina's, an old man. Nice to see you too, Iseei. Now let's make this simple. Let these two dumb children leave, or I'll kill you both here and now. Your choice. He asked as Sasaki stood away from the children, as did Shrieker, but growling like an animal as he walked away from them before the older man leaped down to them. Stay behind me. It'll be alright. Wait. Is it just you here? Shido chuckled before looking at Iseei with a smirk. Not to worry, my wife is helping out your female friend. And Irina is here too. She's helping out your friends at school. And before you ask, no, the three of us aren't Soul Reapers or Fullbringers. We're just exorcists with a lot of power. Iseei was shocked at this until the trio looked to see a massive blue arrow wound the Mino's grand, but before it could retreat, its head was sliced off by an unknown attack, making it fall to the land. Sasaki whistled at this display. Interesting. Hope to see you when you improve some more. Sasaki said as he and Shrieker left the area while Iseei and Shido walked with Khan behind them. So why are you here? That simple. Our superiors told us that there was a massive outbreak of hollows in Karakura town, so we were sent here with others to make sure the residents were safe. I wish we could stay, but we have to report back once the seal wears off. As much as I'd like to play catch up with you, someone is waiting for you back home. An old friend of your grandfather who wants to fulfill his dying wish. Before Shido could leave, two figures suddenly landed beside him. Are you alright, honey? Shido nodded. I'm fine, dear, but I think an old friend would like to say hi. The woman turned to see Iseei. She smiled brightly and immediately took off her hood. Isei's eyes widened. Mrs. Shido waved at Iseei. Hi, Ice-chan. Oh, look at how you've grown, you've become such a handsome young man. Iseei blushed from the comment before another cloaked individual tackled him. Iseei-kun. Iseei groaned hearing this before seeing the eyes and hair of an old friend of his. Irina. You remember me? Hey, you grew in more places than one. Hey. I said I'd grow a balloon on my, and I meant it. But compared to those two orange-haired bimbos, I'm way behind. Irina mentally screamed as she whined from not having giant busts like the two girls they saved, unlike the flathead boy who looked like a girl. Iseei was somewhat flustered by Irina's forward, still, she was always quite the tomboy in personality. I have a busty tomboy as my best friend and crush. Thank you God. Irina smiled as she hugged Iseei before she got up and helped Iseei up before dusting his pants off. Sorry. I was just so happy to see you again. I was worried sick when I heard hollows invaded your town. Thanks for the assist, so how long will you guys be here? Unfortunately, just today. We have to check the area for stray souls before returning to the church. Sadly, we're still in an uneasy situation with the Soul Reapers. After what they did to the Quincy's and the war, the church faction had lost a lot of good people to the Hollows and Soul Reapers, especially the war. Iseei suddenly flared as he clenched his fist until Khan came up to Iseei and hugged him from behind. The Shido noticed Iseei had calmed down right away, and the parents could immediately see why. Ah, the young man finally has a girlfriend. It seems Irina has a rival for Isei's affections. But knowing the updates I get from Mickey now and again, Irina will still end up with Iseei. It'll be quite entertaining to watch Irina try to make Iseei only hers. Irina pouted at this as she pushed Khan away before she spoke to him at the park away from the others. Listen, Iseei. I want to stay here and be with you, I do, but you know how faithful I am to the church. I can't abandon my church and faith in God, plus there's no church here. That's a problem. However, I do wish to remain in contact with you, so can we, Iseei? Irina asked with a nervous look until Iseei replied. Definitely. I would like to chat again like old times. As do I, but I have a mission to complete. I suggest you head home. Ranjiku is reporting to her superiors as we speak. Trust me when I say you'll love this visitor. Irina said before kissing Isei's cheek and running back to her folks before Khan snickered at his flustered face. So when's the wedding? Don't you want a kiss from someone softer? Khan giggled pervertedly while showing off Ranjiku's dot. Iseei rolled his eyes before he pulled Khan into a steamy kiss, making the mod soul's face flush before slowly sinking into it. Once Iseei parted from Khan, the mod soul's eyes were somewhat foggy. "How's that? Was that what you wanted? You Khan shakily nodded as he shook his head before heading back to Ranjiku as she took over her gigai. They then headed home as Ranjiku told Iseei what happened to her after she made him leave. Iseei then explained that he and Khan were facing a spirit working with the Hollows and that Shrieker was with them until they reached home to see Mickey and Goro giggling with a blue-haired woman laughing with them while having some tea. "Ah, Iseei. Ranjiku. Come say hi to your grandfather's old partner Griselda Quattro." Mickey said as Griselda smiled at them both before looking at Iseei and patting his head. "Aw. It's so nice to see little Ice again. I remember when you were so small, you'd call me grandma and hug my legs when you were scared. So cute." Iseei blushed profusely at the memory, but he never thought he'd be seeing his grandfather's old partner again after so many years. "And it doesn't help that I think she's smoking hot now. I blame Ranjiku for this, she's 5 times older than me and I still find her sexy as hell." Iseei then chatted with her for a few hours until Mickey and Goro headed to bed before Griselda sat across from Iseei and Ranjiku and took out a box. "Iseei. Your grandfather wanted you to be safe from the supernatural world, so he hid it from you about his work. However, the Soul Reapers learned of his existence and eliminated him, but before he passed away, he made me promise that should you one day get involved in the supernatural, then he wanted me to give you this," Griselda said before taking out a bracelet with a cross inside the circle. "This was your father's Quincy bow. A long time ago, before the Biblical War, the Quincy's were the elite soldiers who fought to defend the souls and kill the Hollows, but when the Soul Reapers began to clash with them, we tried to form a peace treaty with the Soul Reapers. Sadly, it resulted in many lives being taken. Not just the warriors but the men, women, children, hell even the newborns weren't spared," Griselda said as she clenched her fist in anger, remembering the war with the bastard until she looked at Ranjiku. "So dating a Soul Reaper, huh? You're not a bad kid, but I know my godson won't be a cougar." Iseei gained a tick mark. "For fuck's sake, auntie. I'm a grown-ass man. I can take care of myself fine." Griselda giggled at this while Ranjiku rolled her eyes. "You're 17. In high school. I highly doubt that's the age of a man," Griselda said with a knowing smirk as Iseei grumbled in frustration, looking away from his aunt until Ranjiku cleared her throat. "I understand that you don't trust me, and I don't blame you, but I swear I won't harm Iseei in any way. I love him," Ranjiku said, holding his hand, making Quincy smile before nodding. "Okay, but I have to go back soon. There is someone who can teach you how to use the bow. You know Ryushida, no? His father owes me. Tell him Griselda sent you. He'll know. Trust me." Iseei nodded. He knew exactly who Uryu was. "Yeah, I know of him. I see him glaring at Ranjiku and Rukia most of the time. But he seems to avoid me whenever he sees me look at him." Griselda nodded as she replied. "His father's name is Ryukin Ishida, and believe me when I say he's a cold guy with a thick layer of skin. Ever since Soul Reapers killed Uryu's grandfather, he's hated them since then, but to hear that he's working with a human using the powers of one is shocking. Before I go, I need to leave you with a warning. It's only a matter of time until the Soul Society comes to investigate the Mino's grand attack, so be prepared to face a captain possibly." Iseei sweated lightly as he nodded. Griselda then hugged her god-nephew and pecked him on the forehead. "I love you, nephew. TCH love you too." Griselda smiled at her tsundere of a god-nephew before leaving the two alone as Ranjiku sighed loudly while laying back on the couch. "Ugh. I feel like I just faced a whole army of Jillians and barely won by the skin of my teeth. At least you didn't get your ass handed to you by a mere spirit. Damn, this sucks. So what do you think their grand plan is? If it was just summoning the Minos, they're done for, right? Honestly. I don't know, but what I do know is that their boss, whoever he is, isn't done yet." Iseei said as the scene changed to the Karakura cemetery where Grand Fisher, Numb Chandelier, Kurumi, and Shrieker ate the Minos head saved by Kurumi before they shivered in delight as power filled their very existence. The Shrieker, while happily gaining more power, was annoyed by the interference of Shidu. Well, the Shrieker didn't look at it, he was a wanderer. He had fled England when the Shidu family attacked him, and the Shrieker was less than pleased to see that man again. Especially when he had that boy right in his grasp, Iseei Haidu would have been dead right there and then had it not been for Shidu. Fisher noticed this and spoke to him. "Shrieker. I know you have a personal vendetta with the Shidu family, but wait until they're gone. Being too stubborn will get you killed. Plus, I have some news for you. A certain Cicadial you know has been purchased today by one of the humans. Numb Chandelier almost got destroyed by one of the exorcists, but escaped the area until she was nearly killed. Star," he said as Chandelier looked away. "It was that woman's fault. Had it not been for her, I would have gladly had their souls." Shrieker laughed at this and replied. Guess the old saying is true. Don't send a woman to do a man's work. Star want to say that again, bird brain. Anytime. Anyplace, you squid bitch. Star. Kurumi released her aura. Enough. Shrieker and Chandelier immediately stopped their stupid squabble, making Fisher sigh relief. Thank Waco Mundo for that interruption. The Hollows finished their meal, and they began to rejoice before Fisher smiled as he felt the power make him stronger. He smiled as he reached into the prison and pulled out a small black orb. This small orb is supposed to make us arachnars. Being who is said to be stronger than Vastolord, so I'll be using it on the two of us. That's all it can do since the man who gave it to me said it would provide us with power beyond imagination. I'll be the first one, so does anyone else wish to be next? Kurumi slithered up to Fisher, a grin plastered on her face. I believe I shall become an arrancar. I want to see the boy that angered Shrieker so much. Star. Fisher nodded as the orb consumed them both in bright light until the two Hollows were now humans of sorts, like the one that took Grand Fisher's place was a smaller, more humanized version of his old self, with a tattooed face. His mask remnants consist of his entire lower jaw, obscuring half of his face. The one that took over Kurumi's place was a light brown-haired girl with red eyes, armor covering her bust, head as a helmet of sorts that had a long tail coming down the back of her helmet. The two looked at their semi-bodies as Kurumi looked at her bust and tilted her head. What purpose do these strange meat sacks have on me? They are heavy and annoying. Kurumi said as she poked her as Fisher smiled at his form before seeing the sword. Ah yes. This is the source of our power. Now we have powers similar to those of a Soul Reaper. Chandelier patted Kurumi's shoulder. Trust me, honey, you can find a lot of uses with those. Star. Kurumi looked down at her bust before swinging them around until she had stars in her eyes. I get it. I can use these as weapons to beat my opponent's head into the ground. Thanks, Chandelier. Kurumi said with a joyful smile, while Chandelier sighed at her friend's lack of understanding of the human body. I mean using them to seduce others. Star. Kurumi's face blushed at this. Wait. Seriously, Shrieker immediately spoke up. Use those on that Haidu piece of shit. He had a big woman with him, so that must be his weakness. Kurumi gasped at this before tilting her head to the side. But how do I seduce? Do I just slap him with these meat sacks? They look like emergency rations in case I get hungry. Kurumi said as she wanted to bite it until Fisher stopped her. Kurumi. Stop. Okay, but now what do we do? Simple. Now we test this power. Shrieker. When those exorcists leave, go and hunt down the boy. I know you still have your game going on with him. Fisher said as Shrieker smiled at his boss before nodding. Excellent. Thank you, Fisher, and I assure you that it'll be a lot of fun. Star, Shrieker said as he flew away from the cemetery. Fisher sighed before he turned to Kurumi. Should he fail, it'll be up to you to deal with the Haidu boy. Fisher gave off a maniacal grin. I have a certain orange-haired brat to deal with and it'll be quite the reunion. Fisher said as he made his way to the temple before Chandelier and Kurumi looked at each other. Now what? Time to teach you how to flirt. Oh. I'm ready, sensei. I wonder if I can use this as a weapon on women to take out both the orange-haired one with the Haidu kid. Thanks for watching this video. If you really enjoy this video, like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification. Don't forget to support and follow the Nefarious Doctor for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story link in the description. See you in the next video. Goodbye.